right, KAWS. I read yesterday that these were not initially a name. You like the letters, you like how they went together, and it just kind of became who you were. Two-part question. Is that true? And second part is, has it become more now through the years that KAWS they do belong together?
Yeah, I mean, I always like the name because of the letter function. You know, when you're an artist working with letter forms for, you know, the majority of your output, you try to think of letters that look good together and balance well. And then later on, I realized, like, I like the way you can't attach it to a meaning. It doesn't, you know, it kind of gives less, it lets you present the work without having more information. You know, if it was like Brian Donnelly, you'd suddenly have a lot of like clues into who this person is. But just working through the name KAWS, almost like a company name, let me sort of play another degree of separation and just put the work into the world.
Quickly, I want to go back to the street art in New Jersey. And another thing I read was school wasn't great, and so you decided to put your name on walls. Is that how really it all began?
I wouldn't say that. Even if school was great, I would have been out painting. It's just, you know, when you're younger and an artist, I think a lot of times you don't understand, like, if you don't have it in your surroundings and the different outputs, you don't really know kind of how to be in the world as an artist. And I think graffiti was one of those things where I could kind of meet peers, people, you know, kids my age that were interested in painting and just kind of needed that outlet. And so I gravitated towards it, and that was the closest thing to me.
This exhibit here at Crystal Bridge is called KAWS Family. I'm interested in your thought process as we stop here and look at what you've made, how families will react. What are you looking for when it comes to what they see and maybe their reaction?
You know, I honestly, when I'm making work, I'm not thinking about the reaction of the viewer. I'm thinking about just more communicating the ideas that I have. And I think family, the title of the show came about from this work. Normally with my exhibitions, I choose one work in the exhibition and use that as the full title of the show. I often think about the way, you know, when I make something, how it connects to a whole. And I think that's kind of what family is. Like, when you add something, it kind of expands the boundaries of everyone involved.
My kids are enamored with you. And I want to say 7 days ago, KAWS, they didn't know who you were, but they walked through this hallway and they looked at some of your images and fell in love. This morning, I told my daughter I was going to interview you. She said, I love him.
Yeah.
This work is multi-generational. My parents are going to love it. I love it. My kids love it.
Yeah.
How big of an honor is that to know that?
I mean, I really appreciate the fact that the work could kind of transition through different generations. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to process it. I feel fortunate that I could make work that speaks to different people in different places, you know, places in their life and places geographically. And it's, you know, I don't know, that makes me happy hearing that.
It excites me to hear that my kids are so excited to come in to this exhibit, but I'm assuming it's very humbling.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, like, I think it has a lot to do with, you know, there's the paintings and sculptures I make, but then there's also the projects that I do that kind of gives me this sort of larger dissemination of my work, you know, working with different fashion houses or places. I think just lets the work exist in a way that...
Or The Simpsons.
Yeah, I mean, well, this was just a project. This is my own paintings. This wasn't with them. In fact, when I was making those works, I was imagining just getting in trouble for it.
Did you get in trouble?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
Do they have their own attitudes? Do they have their own characteristics? Because I'm assuming these guys are your friends. You've got BFF, you've got companion, you've got chum.
Yeah.
These guys are friends.
You know, when I'm making sculpture, I'm really just thinking about the form of them. I'm looking at, you know, the reason why I was drawn to create chum was just this sort of bubble shape that, I don't know, I just always appreciated it. Like, I love the fact that, like, Michelin was one of the first sort of companies to use an advertising character as a mascot. And it's something, you know, when I first created it, I didn't think it would have the longevity that it has, but it's, you know, it occupies a place in my mind that I keep returning to and working with the form.
Cereal, as we continue through this exhibit. You told a story yesterday in a private tour about how General Mills reached out to you about Reese's Puffs. And your response was, yeah, cool, but I want this. I want the Monsters brand. Tell me that story, how that happened.
I mean, that is kind of how it went. I was excited, you know, I was excited to do the Reese's Puff project just because I grew up looking at, you know, these cereal boxes and their sort of graphic nature and their interplay with characters. And I don't know, I just like the idea, you know, I'm making these works that exist in galleries or museums or in public spaces, but then suddenly it's in the store that's up the corner from you that you've entered your whole life, and now it's on a shelf in that space. And for me, it's like to reach people in that way is very important. But when we were working on this, I kept talking about monster cereals. I think just the fact that, you know, this is a series that was started in 1973, like the year before I was born. And I always gravitated towards it. You know, they made these incredible vinyl toys and sort of toys within the boxes. And I just wanted to make a body of work based on that. So I did the project with General Mills where there's, you know, you can see in the background, it's not wallpaper, it's actual boxes. And then only after that point, I decided to do the paintings. I mean, that's the great thing about art is you make a work and then it exists in this space and somebody can, you know, discover it 100 years from now or 20 years from now. And it's there and it sort of adds to this conversation.
All right, let's blend Warhol and pop culture now, because here we are with shoes, and I'll be honest with you, KAWS, I was looking at buying these knowing that we had this interview, and I did not, and now I wish I did because they're on display. Did you know that you wanted to be a part of pop culture? I mean, you designed the Moon Man for MTV Awards. We've got this amazing sculpture here. Was pop culture part of what you wanted to become, or did it just happen?
I don't think you could say it's like I wanted to be a part of pop culture, but I wanted to like acknowledge my surroundings.
Yeah.
And I want to do it, you know, like I love making product. I love having that sort of interaction with people, you know, kind of living with my work in a candid way, whether it's a shoe or a t-shirt or, you know, I just felt like it's important. It's just, for me, it's always been a part of the practice and a real way of kind of getting my work into the world. If I were solely relying on sculpture and painting and shows, I think I would reach a small fraction of the people that I do.
It goes back to that multi-generational thing, right? I mean, some of this stuff reaches other generations that maybe a museum wouldn't.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, you could do a project and suddenly, you know, especially collaborating with a musician and you're in front of like millions of people.
Right.
And, you know, then you go and you work somewhere else in some other industry. It could be like a watch industry, a sneaker industry, and that's a whole new pocket of people.
What is that thought process when you show up to Bentonville, Arkansas? You took the first phone call that Crystal Bridges wanted to have an exhibit here.
You know, originally this exhibit started at the AGO in Toronto, and at that time there was no plan to travel the show, and you know, later into the shows, its duration, I found out it was coming to Bentonville and to Crystal Bridges, which is a gorgeous museum. And you know, I'm excited. Like that's really my goal in exhibiting is to make work and put it in front of people. And it's so different than seeing it on a screen or seeing it in a magazine, to kind of actually get paintings in front of people. So I'm excited. It's a beautiful building, and I think, you know, the people here have been great.